Welcome to Casting Shadows, episode number 9. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy, here with AK. AK, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, ready to talk about some magic and some shadow stuff.
So we do have a couple topics, even though magic is kind of at a standstill right now with everything going on. There are 2 events that happened, online events, of course. There was a modern super qualifier, and there was a modern players tour qualifier. So I kind of want to give you some of these results. We can kind of talk about the modern format as a whole and all that kind of stuff. So for the super qualifier, Amulet Titan took first place, Dredge second, Burn third, Dredge with another position in fourth, 5th was Bant Snow, not to be confused with Bant Snowblade, 6 was Timmy Returns, 7 was Humans, and 8 was Burn. Now, before I start talking about the Players Tour qualifier, I kind of want to ask, what are your opinions on the super qualifier top 8?
Well, the Team Returns deck sounds pretty sweet. I think it's the same list that I saw on SCG versus Live about a couple days ago. It features Savor the Moment, Fires of Invention, Time Warp, stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool that the deck is kind of seeing some play. Amulet Titan taking first place is kind of a surprise to me. The deck is still super solid. Titan strategies are still very prevalent, but I feel like the snow decks are kind of pushing those out, especially having Path to Exile as their main removal. It's like, I'll play a Titan, and okay, for 1 ban, I'm going to get rid of it. Granted, they get so much value at Field of Dead and Valakut stuff now. But snow decks being prevalent is no surprise, but I was a little surprised by Dredge. And I have to ask, is the Dredge list the list that features like Ox of Agonis, I think it's called?
Yes, this second place one by Helvetii has 3 Ox in it. And the 4th place one by Matai, maybe, also has 3 Ox. So yeah, they're both running the Ox of Agonis plan.
Gotcha. Yeah, Ox is it's a powerful card. Like, it's no joke. Like, it's super cool. Dredging all those cards and then coming out as a 5/3. That's like, it's a force to be reckoned with. And I'm happy to see Dredge bounce back. Like when the looting ban hit, I feel like everyone thought Dredge was gonna, just kind of shrivel away and die. But I know Zodek MTG is a really big Dredge player. I think on his channel he has his Twitter, he has a line that says what is dead may never die. So I thought that was kind of cool that, how Dredge is all these dead creatures and, it can ban looting, but the deck's never like dead. Like, it always bounces back, and they're like playing Shriekhorn. So losing looting wasn't that big of a deal for them. Like, okay, I'll just keep on playing like add mill cards in my Dredge deck. Cause as soon as I get in Dredger in the yard, that's really what I really need. So I think it's pretty well positioned right now with all the snow decks, because yes, the snow decks, have access to white, so they're able to play like Path to Exile and stuff, or they're able to play Path to Exile and Rest in Peace. At the same time, though, these decks are relying on Euro, and so they really need their own graveyard to be intact. Thus, they're playing more vulnerable cards like Ashiok, Dream Renderer, which is a fantastic card, exiling the Dredge player's graveyard. At the same time, though, the Dredge player just needs 1 turn to go off, really, I almost feel like. I mean, I've had plenty of times where I'll Nihil Spellbomb or Torment's Crypt or even Ashiok their graveyard, and then they're like, okay, discard this, mill myself. Oh, there's a Dredger in the yard, Dredge 5, here comes Narcomoebos and Prize Amalgams, up the wazoo, just coming at me full force. So those type of exile effects are powerful, but not as quite as powerful as Rest in Peace or Leyline of the Void would be. So it's kind of cool to see them bouncing back and maybe taking advantage of these slower fair decks, such as the snow decks, because granted they're super fair, but they do operate at a slower rate, so to speak, than other decks. Like, they go, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, then Euro comes out and they ramp up, and then, their game plan is quite fair. They're going to beat you to death with a Euro or a Jace Ultimate or something like that. They're not like some super unfair tactic, as we've discussed many times in the channel. So it's cool to see Dredge bounce back and to fight these decks. I mean, you had some very good results a few weeks ago before all the coronavirus stuff started with Crabvine versus the Sultai Snow and the Bant Snow decks. So it's unsurprising to me that those like unfair graveyard strategies are kind of having a little more easier time taking on the snow decks than, let's say, like Grixis Death Shadow or, something like Jund, so to speak. So it's definitely a cool list.
I definitely agree. I was looking at it and I was like, whoa, Dredge got 2nd and 4th. Like, it kind of threw me off a little bit. But Dredge has always been a very good deck. Like you said, with Faithless Looting getting banned, I think Dredge kind of had to rediscover itself a little bit. It's obviously starting to do good since the banning, but we didn't see, a lot of people called for the, like, not called for it, like they thought Dredge was dead after Faithless Looting got banned, and rightfully so, because Faithless Looting was such an integral part to the deck. But it's kind of like Stoneforge Mystic, where it got unbanned and it took a while to find its footing. Dredge saw Faithless Looting get banned, and it took a little bit to find its footing, because it was this deck and then it was Is It Phoenix that were hurt the most by Faithless Looting getting banned. The Phoenix style decks really haven't come back, and now we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence with Dredge, and I think that's really cool, because me with my graveyard strategies I really love. So yeah, I was also surprised seeing Burn in 3rd place and 8th place, because against Euro, that is very horrible that basically they're just casting it for 3 mana. Your lightning bolt that you just played last turn was rendered useless. During like the Oko days, Burn was just horrible because there was so much life gain, and that's where it struggles the most, because all this damage that you're doing to them, they're just gaining it back through different ways.
In increments of 3 too, so it's even a bigger slap in the face.
So Euro's really hard. Titan, I mean, there's a lot of snow decks right now, so there's a lot of Euro right now. Titan decks, they play Radiant Fountain, sometimes another Radiant Fountain in the sideboard, so they're able to just keep on bouncing back and gaining life. So I was actually pretty surprised to see Burn in 3rd and 8th, because Burn has kind of been on its way down in the meta a little bit. Like after Oko got banned, it was kind of one of the top decks because everybody was trying to figure out where the meta was going, and Burn just does its thing. Doesn't really matter, but as we start to see a meta develop, that's why I just thought it was surprising, because Euro gains a lot of life, Titan can gain a lot of life, but Burn still coming through, and I thought that was really cool to see. Humans making a little bit of a push there for 7th place. Humans has been on another deck that's been on the downtick, because some of these other decks like Titan and the Eurosa style decks are just kind of outvaluing them. So a lot of decks that we thought were on the downtick put up a good performance in the super qualifier, and I thought that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, and with Burn, it's kind of interesting too, for sure, because I feel like Mono Red Prowess at the moment is a superior deck, because they're able to punish the Euro style decks by just killing you before Euro even matters. Like, go ahead and gain 3. My Kill Fiend is like, a 9/5 or 9/3 with double strike and trample or something. Like, it's crazy how big they can make their Kill Fiends and their Monastery Swift Spheres. Like, sometimes you're playing against them and their Swift Spear is like a 5/6 or something. Like, they're monsters when they get, and then plus you're taking like bolts and lava darts to the face. And so they're able to kill you before your Titans and your Euros really matter. Where Burn kind of has to play like the fair, like bolt per turn kind of value game, and usually that's a nightmare against these style decks. But maybe they're just kind of punishing the newer players playing the Euro decks because they're not sure how to operate them. And maybe the Blood Moons, I imagine in the sideboard they have Blood Moon and Path to Exile and stuff like that, which is able to really shore up the Euro matchup. So maybe they're just kind of hedging against that matchup and just going all in with the Burn plan 2, game 1 and game 2.
And Euro's a little bit easier to answer than Oko was, because Burn had no plan for Oko whatsoever.
Yeah, no, Red and White historically has a pretty hard time dealing with Planeswalkers, but, I cast Euro, gain 3 life, draw a card, put a land in play, I'm like, okay, path it, and then you can just bolt them and then take away that 3 that gain their life kind of thing. The problem is when Euro is out in the field and they start doing that repeatedly, gaining 3 life and card draw, then the game is pretty much over. But maybe you can also blank them by having Skull Cracks in the main deck. I know when life gain is quite popular, Skullcrack is able to cheat some people out thinking they're safe, fetchy, and shocking. And like, oh, I'll just play this Euro and I'll gain back the life I just lost. I'll come out ahead. And then you Skullcrack in response. And then, they kind of just sit there all sad because their initial plan of gaining the life is just taken away from them. So, and then humans is kind of unique to see because, like you said, like the Erosa style decks are really just chock full of value with, stone or with, Gilded Gooses and Urzas and, all that stuff that's able to pump out so quickly. And humans kind of historically has had a hard time dealing with that because usually humans punishes those decks with one threat that are ridden to victory, aka Grixis Death Shadow running a Gurmag Angler or a Death Shadow, and then it gets Reflector Mage and you feel like your life is ending. But with Erosa, it's like, okay, bounce my Urza, thank you, I'll just play it again and get a bigger construct, or Bounce My Goose, okay, like there's so much ETB value in that deck that you don't really want to bounce anything, and your main form removal is just dismembering the sideboard, so it feels quite bad. So it's kind of cool to see them eking out, maybe they're hedging against their matchups with even more Thalias. I know Big Thalia is pretty good against them because they're all their Mystic Sanctuaries and stuff like that. So you're able to slow them down just a little bit. But then again, it's a super qualifier. So I'm not saying it's not competitive or anything, but I'm really interested to see what the meta looks like when the big events start back up.
I agree.
I know Magic is in a super weird place because the coronavirus has just put a hold to anyone's life. I know you're working from home. I'm working from home. Many people I know are working from home. And so NBA, NHL are canceled. I don't think I've ever had that in my whole entire lifetime, a sports organization canceling like that. Sports have always been this constant stream of entertainment no matter what. And now those are even canceled. It's crazy. So, the fact that I can't just go and, what tournament's this weekend? Let me turn on Twitch and, watch SCG, Atlanta or Chicago or North Carolina, all that kind of stuff. I can't, or GP Birmingham, can't watch it because nothing is being played. So we have no idea what the meta could look like once everything starts to return to normalcy. Hopefully that's soon, all the positive thoughts that we figure out this whole thing soon and we flatten the curve, here in the US and stuff like that. So I'm really hoping that we can see the meta return to, something where Shadow is good. Then again, we have Akora coming out, I think, in April. So I know it's all about the layer of behemoths and humongous beasts and stuff like that. So I'm hoping some sort of pseudo ferocious mechanic comes back. Would be kind of cool to have Shadow get some new tools. Whatever set comes out, I'm always looking, okay, what cards can apply to Shadow, what cards can't. So I'm hoping to get some goodies in that one. But I think it's all time for that list. You want to move on to the next online tournament you pulled up?
Yeah, so there was a Modern Players Tour qualifier. I did like as you said, the meta is really at a big question mark right now. So while we do have results for these two events, at the same time, they're not regionals, they're not huge events. So it's not really, while some of these decks are definitely top decks in the meta, it's definitely a real big question mark of what the meta really is right now. But for this specific Modern Players Tour qualifier, we talked about Dredge. Dredge ended up getting first place with this with an 8-0. Titan Shift in second place. Instead of Bant Snowblade, it was actually Esper Stoneblade in third place. We have Jund in fourth place. Tron, Mono Green Tron in fifth place. Erosa 6, Amulet Titan 7th, and Erosa finishing up with 8th place. Now that you look at it with the top 8s here, Dredge had 3 top 8s in these two events. Titan's style decks had 3. Erosa 2 to 3. What do you think about these? Not only the Players Tour qualifier, I guess we can go in a little bit in depth. Titan, we have Erosa. Are those the definitive top 2 decks in the modern format? Even though there is basically here, I'll try to ask this. When the Magic events return and we start having some big events again, we're able to play in person again, will the modern meta develop into Amulet Titan being a top deck along with Erosa?
I feel like Amulet Titan is certainly powerful. I think it's one of the better decks to format for sure. And it was the best deck for a little bit too. But I feel like the snow decks just have a big edge on it. They're just able to counter a Mystic or Mystic Sanctuary. They have Coatls and they have Path now as their main removal source, which lines up very well against Titan. And Field of Ruins to counteract the Cavernous Souls so the Titans are uncounterable. So I'm not too sure that Amulet Titan will be the best deck anymore, the boogeyman to beat. I feel like that the Bant Stoneblade list and the snow decks in general with Euro and stuff like that are just having a better of a field day with the meta at the moment. And Euro is just such a powerful card, and then all the incremental value that adds up in those decks is ridiculous. So I feel like the snow decks are definitely going to have more of an edge. And Erosa is part of that list, or part of that meta for sure, because Erosa relies on a lot of cool snow synergies with Arkham Ashlade, with Gilded Gooses and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to see what those decks are going to look like. We are able to start playing in person again. We have the big events. So I think that I would hedge more on the snow decks being the top dogs in the meta and Amulet coming in a close second. Mm-hmm. But I could see myself being wrong and Amulet just destroying everyone when the tournaments start back up again. I do know that because the snow decks are on top of the meta, Shadow is going to have a little bit hard time dealing with them because of how much interaction they run, how fair they are, like we talked about last week with how much value they can just pump out. So it's interesting to see what people come up in the Discord and, all the social media outlets to come up with ways to beat these decks, because Dan Stoneblade went to being that one-off matchup you might face a couple times, now to being like a matchup you need to prepare for. And I think we might have to go up a number of mystical disputes in the sideboard or something, because granted, if Veil of Summer wasn't around, our matchup would be so much easier, because them having another 1 mana counter to our 1 mana counters just feels so bad, But I would hedge in the snow decks being the top dogs in the meta.
I would agree with you. I think Bant, Stoneblade, and Eurosa decks, they're definitely the top. I would say the top 2, I guess, because MTG Goldfish kind of puts them together as the same deck, but they're definitely not, because they do different things. But at the same time, Mystic Sanctuary is a really good land card, and the decks that are playing that card along with Euro seem like they have so much value that it's kind of hard to dispute them as the top deck. I think Amulet Titan is pretty close. They're kind of in an experimental stage with Once Upon a Time being gone. I'm seeing some of the lists run Ancient Stirring. Some of them run Karn the Great Creator. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think that in a matchup between Eurosa comes out as a top deck because they just have so much value. Euro does so many different things. You're playing Bant Stoneblade, then you have another avenue with Stoneforge Mystic, and Arkham's Astrolabe able to just filter through any of the mana that you usually don't run into problems running 3 colors, even if you're having 2 islands on the board, maybe like a breeding pool or something.
Yeah.
So these snow style decks have definitely become a dominant workforce in this meta. I think even when the meta starts to develop, as we start doing some of the big events, there's still going to be a top deck, because Euro is such a good Magic card.
Oh my god!
And even if you're not on the Stoneforge Mystic plan, the deck is still so good, because Cryptic Command plus Mystic Sanctuary just means that anything that your opponent plays in the late game is just going to get countered, and you're immediately going to put Cryptic Command back on your library, because you're just going to bounce the Mystic Sanctuary to your hand, play it again. Cryptic Command's going to go on top of your library, and it's just never-ending value that decks like Grixis Death Shadow are just going to struggle with, because towards the late game, when your hands are kind of empty, it's well, great. I'm just going to scoop because I'm never going to get past this Cryptic Command.
Yeah, not to mention they have Emery and Bobble to draw an extra card every turn, pretty much. Like that, her casting EE every turn.
Yeah, I definitely think, even though Dredge put up some great results, I don't see it as a dominant deck in the format. I think it's a very good deck in the format. But when I think of the top decks, I definitely think Eurosa, I definitely think Bant Snowblade, I definitely think Amulet Titan or Titan Shift or something. More Amulet Titan than Titan Shift, but Dredge isn't quite up there yet. I'd like to keep a close eye on it as the meta starts to actually develop and we're able to look at where the meta is going to take place.
For sure, because I feel like Dredge definitely is always it kind of just it ebbs and flows with the meta. Sometimes Dredge is super good. Other times Dredge lines up very poorly at the moment. So it just depends when the meta is just right. Dredge is able to spike a tournament or spike a big event by, preying on people who are not prepared with their sideboards. That being said, that Ashiok has found tons of sideboards, so it's kind of hard to spike those tournaments when there are no tournaments too. There are all these online events, which is awesome, and it's so cool to see people trying MTGO for the first time and everything. But we don't have any big events for people to go and spike at the moment because of the whole situation going on in our world. So I have to wait and see what's gonna shake out with, and like I said, maybe by the time everything starts popping off again, Ikoria will be out and there'll be a super powerful card in there that Shadow will utilize, and Shadow will be back in the meta. A boy can dream, but we'll have to wait and see, though, pretty much.
I think Dredge also has an accidental target on its back, too, because Euro, obviously, a lot of people are starting to play Graveyard Hate, they're starting to play Ashiok, Spellbomb, Tormod's Crypt, whatever, because of these Euro-style decks, and incidentally, that hits Dredge, too. So as people start to transform these sideboards even more to try to beat these Eurosa decks, I think Dredge is going to take a little bit of a hit accidentally, because when you're putting some of these sideboard cards in, you're thinking, okay, I gotta hit Eurosa, but then Dredge is just in the background this is gonna hurt me too as well. But I think people are already kind of planning then in some of these online events, but Dredge still put up some decent results, so that's why I'm kind of interested in keeping a look at Dredge as well. But moving on, we talked before, we had some under the radar decks that we wanted to talk about that we think were really cool that don't get as a lot of talk as, because obviously we've already talked so far 20 minutes about Erosa and Amulet Titan. I want to start with you. What is your under the radar deck that you want to talk about?
So I want to talk about some of my favorite cards, which is Unearth and Lightning Skelemental. And I think they're awesome cards for sure. Like I've always, like as soon as they were spoiled in Modern Horizons, I'm like, wow, these are cool. Like Unearth and Modern, like that seems busted. Like I was so excited to tweak with it. You know, I was excited to see Shadow tweak with it. I'm like, maybe finally Shadow will like, you know, bounce back. And I was super excited. But then like we didn't even use Unearth except for some time in Mardu, so it's kind of a bummer. But the deck that kind of popped off during that time was really cool was the black-red Unearth decks with Seasoned Pyromancer and Skelementals, stuff like that. But when the looting ban happened, I think everyone kind of just forgot about Skelementals. But obviously been popping up in the meta, so sometimes, I know a few weeks ago we had the Jun Shadow list with Skelementals in the main board. But the black-red Unearth deck that I've seen on the online leagues, 5-0ing and stuff like that, are playing Thunderkin Awakener, Ball Lightning, Skelemental itself, Instant Neonate to have like the turn 2 stuff, Rotting Registrar. Kroxa now is a huge upgrade for those decks because you're able to just hit their hands so immensely hard. I actually built up a version myself. I purchased the pieces that I need in paper and stuff like that. So me and Jeremy were hammering it out, and it has a pretty darn good matchup against these snow decks for sure, because they like to have really greedy hands, and Skelemental turn 2 comes down and just rips their hand apart. And then if you're able to land a Thunderkin Awakener, it's coming in again for 7 damage total, and their hand is pretty much gone, and they're taking a boatload of damage. So like I said, all I've been preaching lately against these snow decks is hit their hand as hard as you can. Discard, discard, discard. But the problem with discard is that, you can Thoughtseize them and Inquisition them all you want, but you can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck, right? And then drawing a Thoughtseize or Inquisition later in the game feels terrible. Like, when you need a threat or you need that counterspell, you need card draw, you top deck a Thoughtseize or Inquisition, like, okay, thanks, this is useless. But top of the deck, like a Lightning Skelemental, feels fine. Like, okay, I'll cast this for 3 and hammer in. And like I said, a lot of these snow decks are not playing Rest in Peace because they can't afford to hurt their own graveyard with Euro. So they might Ashiok you and exile your graveyard, but if you're able to just, go Neonate, sack, discard a Skelemental, then unearth it, and you can do that in one turn, you can set them back to the Stone Age. So, I see some people splashing white for Kaya Orzhov Usurper. I see them splashing green for like Veil of Summer and stuff like that. So it's cool to see these decks perform, and I'm a really big fan of them. I know Jeremy will post my list probably on YouTube and link it in the description. This is my version of Black Red Unearth. I know there's some other versions that focus a little more controlling, a little more mid-rangey. I like to be super aggro game 1, and I can kind of transfer into this, mid-rangey plan game 2 to try to counteract them. So, Jeremy, do you have any like under the radar decks that you want to talk about on your end?
I do. And then I just want to add on real quick to your list. As I was playing Advanced Snowblade, it's really hard to prepare for Lightning Skelemental to come out. Like, in the back of your mind, it's a good chance that it's going to come out. But at the same time, you're like, am I just going to sit here and wait for it to come out? And even when, like, for Grixis Death Shadow, Icevein Kotal is just a horrible card to see, because once they trigger Death Touch, it's just like, okay, so my Gurmag Angler or my Death Shadow is just going to swing in and immediately die to a 1/1. With Lightning Skelemental, it really doesn't feel bad because they can go ahead and block it. It's just going to die at the end step anyway, but you're also going to have 5 damage that goes over the top. So Icevein Kotal, while it's an excellent blocker against Grixis Death Shadow, it's not a great blocker against Black Red Unearth, because if it exiled, then yeah, that'd be great, but Icevein Kotal just kills it with that touch, and then you're just going to be able to unearth it next turn, or Thunderkin Awakener, swing in, bring it back. So I do think it's a very interesting deck, and it just ripped apart my hand. Lightning Skelemental would swing in, and I try to block with a Kotal. Doesn't really matter. I'm taking 5. I'm also discarding 2, which is not good for Advanced Snowblade because they rely on that hand resources. So it definitely hurt. So I do think it is an interesting deck. I'm also going to be talking about a black-red deck. Death Shadow, Grixis Death Shadow, you got 4-color Death Shadow, Mardu, Jun. Do you have all these 3-color variants? This Death Shadow variant's like, nah, 2's all I need. So yeah, like I said, they cut completely the third color. They're only running black-red. Now, obviously, the Death Shadow plan, they're kind of following suit with the Grixis. They're playing 3 Kroxa in here. Again, 4 Lightning Skelementals showing up here. 4 Seasoned Pyromancer is another discard outlet while also gaining some bodies. Liliana the Veil, like we talked about, that hand pressure is really good in this format. So you have Kroxa that's able to hand pressure. Liliana the Veil, able to hand pressure. Playing 4 Thoughtseize in there, just more pressure. Lightning Bolt, playing 4 of those, which Lightning Bolt isn't great, but at the same time it is good because a lot of these decks are playing Veil this summer. So you're able to get around Veil this summer, and being able to discard a lot with Seasoned Pyromancer just fills up the graveyard even more for Kroxa, which makes it, I think, a little bit of a more reliable card than maybe it is in Grixis, because you've got 3 Kroxa or 2 Kroxa along with 4 Grimog Angler. There's no Angler in this deck, so Kroxa's really the heavy graveyard reliance. 4 Unearth, so you're just going to be able to bring back Skelemental just at will, basically, because you're playing 4 copies. Seasoned Pyromancer, you can unearth Seasoned Pyromancer if you really want to. It just looks like a really great deck. It's extremely under the radar because MTG Goldfish doesn't even call it like Rakdos Death Shadow or Rakdos Shadow. It's literally just called BR. The sideboard looks pretty interesting. 4 Leyline the Void, 4 Fulminator Mage to be able to attack people's lands, maybe attack a Mystic Sanctuary, because we talked about earlier, Mystic Sanctuary is such a good card in Erosa and in a lot of snow type decks. I definitely think it's an interesting deck. What do you think about it?
I mean, it's awesome. Like, people are gonna look at this and be like, oh my god, this is pure jank. But you know what? This looks awesome. Like, it's playing Street Wraiths, so it can fill up the graveyard quicker and make your shadows bigger. I feel like just having the bare bones of 2 colors is really unique. And there's like, you know what? Like, where I'm gonna kill you before blue even matters in my counter spells. Granted, Stumbling Owl is so good. I would like to see like just 2 random blue lands just for Stumbling Owls in the sideboard or even the main board. But I feel like with their plan, it's just like overwhelm me with threats like Seasoned Pyromancer, Death Shadows, so it's really cool to see this deck. I really wish the black-red Canopy lands existed, because like a black-red Canopy land in this deck would just be, godly. So I think it's a cool deck.
And I think it hurts a little bit less when like Fatal Push, Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy hurts less in this deck because you are running 4 Unearth. So even if they do take down a Death Shadow, you're going to be able to unearth it next turn or same turn or whatever, just kind of bring it right back. It's just that reoccurring nightmare for some of these decks.
Yeah, if you're not playing Path or something, Unearth is grabbing all these threats back. It just feels, like if you have like a matchup like Jund or something, like they're going to have a very hard time to deal with this, because you're like, okay, kill my stuff, I'm just going to unearth it. And then when your hand maybe is full of too many unearths, all you have to do is just tap 2 mana and cycle it away, instant speed and counterability, because the cycling is just an ability. So you're able to really eke out this, value. So I think it's a cool deck. I'd be interested if people would like to test it more, maybe refine it more, tweak the sideboard. Having Fulminator Mages in the sideboard sounds sweet with unearthing it, like really hating on those, Tron and Simic or in the Titan decks and stuff like that. But another quick sideboard card I want to talk about to counteract these Erosa and Snow decks is Boil. I know it's a 4-mana sorcery. We probably looked at when we first started playing Magic, being like, what is this? Destroy all islands. Like, okay, I guess if Merfolk gets out of control, we can kind of play this card. But with Boil, it really punishes all those decks playing all the snow lands and fetching really aggressively for islands, because they need to fetch aggressively for islands to have Mystic Sanctuary online really soon. So, casting a Boil on them can just be completely backbreaking. Granted, they have Ashleigh to fix their mana, when they eventually draw into their, other land, or if they have the Field of Ruin on the battlefield or something. But destroying their mana, and that is going to slow them down immensely. If only 4 mana too, it has a very powerful effect. And I've boiled some people. That sounds really dark. I've boiled some people in Magic the Gathering in my time, and it feels fantastic. I've been playing it with it pretty aggressively in the last few weeks in my sideboards, so 2 or 3 of, and it's just been coming in every snow matchup. And it's one of those things where if it gets countered, okay, it's fine with me, because I know that you wasted your counter on this when I have my threat still in hand. I can play next turn, or I can just discard you and then, make sure it's clear and then cast a Boil. So it's a really fantastic card, that you're not it doesn't feel bad the top deck late game, because generally these decks are going to kill you with one big creature or this incremental value with planeswalkers. So boil them late game and send them back to the Stone Age when you can just recur all your threats or top deck your threats faster than they can. Feels fantastic. So it's also like a 20-cent card. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. So, pick up your copies of Boil. It's really cool. And then, like I said, the Jund Death Shadow decks and this black-red deck, I guess, are able to play these. And even Mardu Shadow are able to play Boil. Granted, Grixis Death Shadow cannot, because we play Water Your Graves and Steam Vents and stuff like that. So, I guess you can, but it's going to hurt you too, and you got to be really careful. So I wouldn't recommend playing Boil against us. But I think or don't play Boil in GDS, please God. Don't. You're a madman if you do. Good luck.
Yeah, another thing about Boil, I was going to say that the Arosa, like the Tamir Snow, these Urza style decks, their plan is to be greedy because they have Astrolabe to fix their mana. So even though that they're playing multiple colors, they might only have a breeding pool and then 3 islands, but they have 2 Astrolabes that they're able to play some of these other colors to be able to play black or whatever. And Boil just kind of punishes them for being greedy, which I think is really something that we need to do, because Astrolabe is a very good card for mana fixing, and they're able to just use whatever, be able to tap an island to play a Veil of Summer with an Astrolabe, which is insane. But Boil's just like, okay, so you want to be greedy? I'm going to go ahead and punish you for being greedy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's one of those things that need to be pushed in the meta. Like, I remember when Grixis Death Shadow actually was pretty big in 2017. People were playing Boil on the sideboards then because it punished us for grabbing the Water Graves early, like we always do, like every Shadow player really does. And so, granted, our deck was a little more faster than these Erosa decks, so it didn't punish us as bad. It's a 4-mana sorcery when we're able to kill you, in turn 3 or turn 4 with Battle Rage and stuff like that. But these snow decks are looking to play long, and Boil just really shuts them down. Also, if you're in the green color scheme, you're able to play Choke, which is really good. It just says islands don't untap. And it's a 4-mana enchantment, so it's able to sit out there and just really punish a player too. You can do 2 Boil, 1 Choke. It's a really cool format. It's a really cool way. I prefer Boil more because, like you said, Astrolabe fixes their mana. Maybe they're just able to filter their mana with, their Temple Garden or their Field of Ruins, and then, Brazen Borrower, the Choke, and then counter when it comes back down, and they're good to go. Boil just destroys all those lands and says good luck trying to rebuild. So I like setting them back to the Stone Age.
If you're not a believer of Boil, I would recommend you to watch one of the recent Star City Games videos with Corey Baumeister and Ross Merriam, where Corey just blew up all the other islands, and I think it was Corey, right?
Yeah, it was Corey, and he just had this maniacal look on his face when he did it. He was playing Jund, I believe.
And it just destroyed what Ross was trying to do, and Ross is just like, oh man, okay, I'm going to have to get rid of all this. So if you don't believe us, go ahead and watch them.
It's really cool to see it. And I feel like when the big paper tournaments start back up again, we're going to see at least maybe some Boils in the sideboard. I hope at least. It's a really cool sideboard tech that you're able to use and play. Maybe even, Amulet Titan cannot. Oh, wait, no. Amulet Titan actually get destroyed by it too, because if they have Dryad of Elysian Grove, doesn't it turn all lands into that same type on their end? So it gets boiled, they will get destroyed. Well, because Dryad of Elysian Grove says that all your lands are all types now, right? Which means they're an island too. So if you boil them, does that destroy them? Yeah, because it would destroy them too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That'd be pretty good against them too.
And Titan barely plays any counter magic. So if they go like, oh, Dryad, and here's all my lands, be like, okay, I'm going to boil you and then set them back to the Stone Age. So I don't know. I feel like this is a good sideboard card that some people are ignoring. Granted, it's 4 mana. It's not super fast. It's kind of clunky. But, it's that inevitability and the need to act before it comes down. Like I said, if the snow decks are countering it and they're not countering your threats, that's a good thing in my book that I'm happy to see if the boil gets countered instead of my, game-winning threat or something. So yeah, I think Boil is a fantastic thing.
That's the same thing with Dryad. They're trying to be greedy with it because they're not playing mountains like they used to. And that's the same thing. The same thing with Astrolabe, that they're trying to grab islands. You're punishing them for being greedy. And that's what I really like about this card.
Yeah, it's cool. I think that Magic players always adjust the meta, and we can prey upon these decks. You know, if you have Boil, Ashiok in your sideboard, you're pretty much good for the Face Titan and Stoneblade. So it's kind of cool to see these. Cool to see these innovations pop back up. You know, like I know like Fulminator Mage used to be really good in the sideboards. Like you mentioned that Black-Red Unearth deck, or the Black-Red Shadow deck that you mentioned. I feel like would not be that great in this meta because Fulminator Mage punishes mana bases like us, like really greedy, multiple fetch land type mana bases. But Astrolabe decks will probably just laugh at you because they're playing all basics, you know, half the damn time when it comes to their what's on the battlefield. They're grabbing all their basic lands first, and they're grabbing their shock lands only when they really need them or when they got nothing else to do. And that's like a breeding pool and then, you know, a stomping ground maybe or something like that. But you know, it's kind of cool to see like you said, like these Urza or these sideboard cards pop up to hate out these snow decks, you know. So I think Boil is a super cool card. There's tons of versions. There's unique art you can grab for yourself. There's also like a really cool masterpiece version. Oh, is it I think it's called like it's whatever the Amonkhet special cards were called, the ones that look like Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Those ones, I think it's only like $16. So pick up your copy if you want to bling out your sideboard cards. And I think it look really cool. But yeah, that's it for my Under the Radar deck. And I think that's it for yours, right, Jeremy? Unless there's anything else you have to add.
No, I'm good. So our last topic, our matchup of the week for Grixis Death Shadow. These two decks, the deck that I'm going to be talking about, kind of reminds me of a Bears-Packers kind of vibe because there's always been some kind of rivalry between this deck. It's always a matchup that I think has been really prominent in Magic. Grixis Death Shadow versus Jund. I'm going to start with you. What do you think about the matchup of GDS versus Jund? And then we could talk about like some sideboard cards, and then what cards are bad, what cards are good.
A tale as old as time. I love the Jund GDS matchup. It never feels like one side is too wonky. It never feels that like one side is, you know, taking control of the game way too quickly. It's just good, clean, like fun Magic to me. Like it's just fun, like one deck's focusing on resource now. One deck is focusing on just overwhelming you with like good value cards. Oh wow, it sounds like the Stoneblade matchup. No, it's not the Stoneblade matchup or the Snow deck matchup because I don't know, Jund just feels like actually fair. Like they're not playing these stupid like new Simic cards that do 40 things for 3 mana. Like they're just playing like, here's a Tarmogoyf, here's a Bloodbraid Elf, here's Liliana. Like at least their cards are all really cool value orientated. And like I said, it's really cool for this matchup because you're able to just really just duke it out to the maximum. It's the Thoughtseize deck versus the Thoughtseize deck. You know, like I feel like Jund before Grixis Death Shadow was the go-to 3-color deck featuring black, and then Grixis Shadow popped up and kind of stole the crown for a bit. But since then, they've always been fighting for control of who is the Thoughtseize deck, the 3 colors in it and stuff like that. So right away, the cards that I'm taking out of the main deck are Temur Battle Rage because it's just doesn't line up well with Jund because they're able to strip your hand pretty quickly and they're able to blow you out by taking the key combo piece that you need to combo them out with you know, like a Battle Rage and Shadow plan. And you don't want to top deck Temur Battle Rage late game when you're looking for a big threat or something like that. So take out Battle Rage right away. I trim Inquisitions because I believe, like I said, I don't want to top deck. Like, I want to have discard in the early games, or the early part of the games for sure. But in game 2, I'm not looking to play, like, a big, long, drawn-out game. Like, don't try to out-Jund Jund. Like, Jund can just easily outgrind you. So I want to have all my top decks to be live. So I'm taking out Inquisition. I'm taking out Temur Battle Rage. And then, depending on the Jund build is they're on their amount of Lightning Bolts. I know some players run 4 religiously, others run 2, others run 3. Depending on how their mount is, I usually trim Street Wraith in some number of capacity, either 1 or 2, and that's usually it for the cards I'm taking out. The cards I'm bringing in are Drawnlock. Drawnlock is fantastic against them because it kills virtually all their threats, kills Tarmogoyf, kills Bloodbraid Elf. It counters all their threats too. Again, countering a Bloodbraid Elf doesn't feel too good, but countering Liliana, Tarmogoyf, you know, Bob, Renin 6 feels fantastic. Dreadbore is a great inclusion against them too. It hits their walkers, hits all their creatures. I like bringing in Culligan's Command because you're able to grind them out. Like, again, like I said, I'm not going back on my word or anything when I said don't grind them out, but you're able to push yourself a little more and you minimize your discard spells by, like, oh, have you discard that shadow? Okay, K Command, bring the shadow back, do 2 to you or 2 to your Bloodbraid Elf. So I really like bringing Culligan's Command against them, rebuying your threats over and over. And I know that we, the GDS community, have moved away from Snapcaster for a bit because we're focusing on Kroxa at the moment. And but Snapcaster, if you have any in the sideboard, bring those in too, because having doubling all your 1 mana spells in this intense resource matchup is very good because you want to able to snap push, snap Stubborn Denial and stuff like that. And Kroxa is actually pretty well in the matchup too because it's a threat that can be pushed, yes, and Assassin's Trophy and Abrupt Decay, but it's a threat that keeps on coming back. Like if you have your Thought Scours ready to go, you're able to just keep on casting Kroxa over and over until they eventually just fold because you beat them to death with it or your shadow or stuff like that. So those are cards I'm bringing in. Those are cards I'm taking out. I'll get to my play style, how I'll play against Jund in a second. But before I do that, I'm going to let Jeremy take it and see how he wants to sideboard as well.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your list. I know some players, like some new players, might question why we take out Temur Battle Rage because it's that 1-card combo. But as I'm looking through Jund, they have, let me do some quick math here. I think this is like 11 different ways of removing creatures, 10 different ways because they got 2 Fatal Push, 3 Lightning Bolt, 1 Abrupt Decay, 2 Assassin's Trophy. So they have so many ways of trying to take out your Death Shadow, take out your Gurmag Angler. So as you're trying to have this 1-card combo, when you have such light threats and they have so many answers to it, relying on that is going to be very hard. So that's why you really want to take that out for cards like Culligan's Command, because like you said, helps. You could potentially strip their hand towards the late game if they're holding on to something. Be like, all right, I'm going to do 2 to you, make you discard, or I'm going to do 2 to your Liliana, 2 to your Ren and 6, and do whatever. So Culligan's Command is an excellent card in this matchup. Drown in the Lock, like you said, very good card because Tarmogoyf is one of their main plans. So the graveyard is more than likely going to be heavy, full with different spells. So to be able to Drown in the Lock, a Ren in the 6, to Drown in the Lock, a Liliana of the Veil, counter all that, or Tarmogoyf is 5/6 right now. I'm going to have to get rid of this. I'm going to go ahead and Drown in the Lock that. We're going to take that out. It's a very good card against Jund. A lot of people have turned away from Terminate. I still have at least one in the sideboard. It's a very good answer for a lot of different things. Good answer for Urza, good answer for, kind of a good answer for Uro. It takes out Uro, but they're able to reoccur it anyway. But Tarmogoyf, very clean answer to it. Dreadbore, a lot of people have kind of turned away from that as well, but Planeswalkers, Ren and 6 and Liliana of the Veil is going to be hard for us to deal with because we really don't have too much besides Culligan's Command to do a little bit of damage or swinging into it to take it out. So I think that's kind of an underrated sideboard card. Like you said, if you're still running Snapcaster Mage, it's not good against a lot of decks, but it could be good against Jund because you're able to snap Fatal Push. Or if you're playing bolts in your deck, maybe snap Lightning Bolt, or I'm going to Lightning Bolt Lily, snap Lightning Bolt or whatever.
You can also save your big creature from an Edict effect from a Liliana. If they target you to sacrifice your Gurmag Angler or Death Shadow, in response, you flash in Snapcaster Mage and sacrifice that instead. So that feels really good.
Another good card, Liliana the Last Hope, because like how I mentioned, they have so many ways of destroying your creatures. This is another way to either shrink a Tarmogoyf or shrink whatever they have on the board, a Bloodbraid Elf, or go ahead and -2 it. I'm going to put 2 in the graveyard. Maybe I feed it because I have an Angler in the graveyard. I'm going to feed 2 cards in the graveyard, bring Angler back. Or they took out my Death Shadow. I'm going to go ahead and grab Death Shadow. I need this really bad. It's just another way to kind of answer their removal without actually countering it or something, because they might be able to take it out, but you have Culligan's Command to bring it back. You have Liliana the Last Hope to bring it back. So it kind of minimizes their effect of the removal because now they have to deal with it once again. So I'm going to go ahead and ask, how would you play against Jund? Would you do something differently that you might do against another deck?
So game 1, you want to do the normal GDS plan, which is play as fast as possible and kill them as fast as possible. That's our go-to plan for for playing against every deck. Pretty much game 1. We don't want to diddle dally. We just want to get in there, turn 2 Gurmag Angler, turn 3 Battle Rage it, shorten the game as quick as possible, and then kill you and go to game 2. So game 2, what you want to do is, you could still either A, go for that super quick plan, or B, play a little bit of mid-range. Don't fall into the trap of trying to outjun them, because like I said, they're going to have better mid-range cards than you are, but have some, I have to call insurance in the mid-range matchups. Cards like Liliana Last Hope, cards like Culligan's Command, Draw on the Lock. Prioritize Gurmag Angler over Death Shadow, in my opinion, because it blanks their... I don't think Jund is playing too many numbers of Assassin's Trophies. I think they're playing maybe 1 to 2 of. Their main method of removal... 2. They're playing 2? Okay, so their main method of removal then is Fatal Push and like Lightning Bolt for creatures. And then like Edict effects via Liliana. So having Stubborn Denial ready to go to protect your Gurmag Angler feels fantastic when they tap out for Liliana. Use Stubborn Denial, then their whole turn gets Time Walk pretty much. And then you're free to do what you want without worrying about stuff getting Fatal Push or stuff like that. So Death Shadow is almost like a threat that you can almost count on being pushed or killed like repeatedly, because they have so much removal packed into their deck. On the same note though, if you have a really heavy shadow hand that you're able to pump out super quickly, like a big shadow, multiple big shadows too, do that instead of Gurmag Angler. You want to kill them before they can get into the late game and start grinding you down with their Lilianas and stuff like that. So game 2, have insurance, still try to play quickly, but prioritize Gurmag Angler, I would say, unless you have a shadow heavy hand. Be prepared for Edict effects, so maybe save your Snapcasters to flash in order to protect your big threat on the board, like a Gurmag Angler or Kroxa or a Death Shadow. So have those insurance pockets, and then you're able to kind of sneak the game away by hitting them hard, hitting them fast, and then having the extra cards just to help you shore up the matchup. Overall, it's not a terrible matchup. I think it's almost dead even. They're able to pressure us with tons of discard. We're able to interact with their spells in the stack. We have super good blue cantrips. They have ridiculous card advantage sometimes at Ren 6, grabbing back the peat lands and cycling lands. So it's a really cool matchup, and it Jun's the best deck in the format. I think that's when that is really good too. It's just a fun, fair deck to play against, and with Shadow, it never feels like you're getting drowned too much, or you're getting overwhelmed. It's always like you're on the cusp of, who can win, who can grind it out, who can kill you before their plan starts, So I really like it. I think it's an awesome matchup.
And you definitely want to be careful of Scavenging Ooze too, because if you have something in your graveyard that they could just eat, or Kroxa can look potentially bad, you might be able to Raven's Grind them, but then they play Scavenging Ooze and they're able to eat that, and you can't bring that back later. So you definitely want to be careful of that card as well.
Also, when you're delving, prioritize delving away Mistress Bauble, because Mistress Bauble almost always grows their Goyf, like to a proportion that's bigger than your Gurmag Angler or sometimes your Shadows. So having your playing a Gurmag Angler and shrinking their Goyf feels amazing. So always check what's in their graveyard and then delve the stuff in your yard that matches theirs. So it doesn't make their graveyard any bigger. So get rid of your artifacts, get rid of your creatures if you have a Street Wraith in there, so that it can't eat it later too with a Scavenging Ooze. So make sure you prioritize your delving / escaping with Kroxa and Gurmag Angler to shrink their Goyfs and to make your threats the biggest, baddest guys in the battlefield. But I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. We apologize for cutting this podcast a little bit short. It's just because, there aren't a ton of topics right now to talk about when it comes to events, because obviously we mentioned many times before, everything going on. Hopefully in the future that changes. We have plenty of topics to talk about to keep you guys preoccupied and busy and focused on Shadow and stuff like that. So if you have any comments, questions below, please let us know, and see you next week.